Welcome to the More Than Anxiety podcast. I'm Megan DeVito, and I'm the life coach for stressed out and anxious women who want more out of life. I'm here to help you create a life you love to live where anxiety isn't holding you back. Get ready for a lighthearted approach to managing anxiety through actionable steps, a lot of truth talk, and inspiration to take action so you walk away feeling confident, calm, and ready to live. Let's get to it. There, you are listening to episode 86 of the More Than Anxiety podcast. This week, I am talking with Pam Covarrubius from Cafe con Pam. Pam's an alignment coach, a speaker, a podcaster, and a recovering procrastinator. And in this episode, she is sharing the trauma-informed practices, including different types of EFT that she uses in her coaching sessions with the Latinx community. She's also the host of the globally acclaimed podcast, Cafe con Pam, where she shares candid, thought-provoking insights from diverse voices about entrepreneurship, social justice, and personal growth. She is a valuable resource for people who are looking for business success and who really want to be involved in community-driven positive change. I loved this interview. I loved the method of matrix EFT that she shared. I didn't know anything about that. It turns out there are different types of EFT. If you don't know what EFT is, she's going to talk about that. And if you've heard of tapping, then you do want to know what it is, but you're going to learn so much more. She tells us how she helps her clients. And I am just so grateful that she took time to come on this podcast and share her experience and her expertise and her amazing story. You are going to love this episode. And of course, I will be sharing Pam's podcast in the notes as well, so that you can listen to her and reach out for more information on how you can work with her. Enjoy the episode. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me today on the More Than Anxiety podcast. I am so excited to have Pam Covarrubius with me today. She is with Cafe con Pam. I'm going to link her podcast in the show notes or on YouTube, wherever you're watching or listening to this, so you can connect with her after the show. But I can't wait to introduce you to her today. And I'm going to let her just take it away and get started and tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you for having me today. I am Pam Covarrubias. As you shared, I am a podcaster as well, and I also am a speaker and I'm an alignment coach.
Very good. I love this. Okay, alignment coach, tell me, because I know there's so many different coaches that do so many different things. So tell me what an alignment coach does.
I I call myself an alignment coach because I work with the nervous system. So I'm a clinical EFT practitioner. That's kind of like
Mhm.
very wordy. People don't know what that is. I do a lot of somatic work. I am
Mhm.
trained in a different kind of EFT called matrix reimprinting, which is also something that people don't know what it is. And so alignment, I use the word alignment because once our nervous system is regulated, grounded, we're able to go and take aligned action
Yeah.
into
You,
whatever it is that we're choosing to do.
yeah,
That's why I use the word alignment.
that is amazing. And you have my attention because I know about
Mhm.
EFT a little and it has helped me. So I have a long history of just personal anxiety from the time I was a little kid until I was about 40. And so one of the things that really helped me was EFT, but I do not
Mm.
know about maybe the specific kind of EFT. And there's probably a lot of people listening that are like, EFT, I have no idea what that is. So can you just tell them, like, what the heck is EFT for people who don't
To-
know?
yes. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. It makes no sense. It's a really wordy name. People also call it tapping. So basically, it uses three principles. Traditional Chinese medicine, so we use the meridian points in the body, the various parts of in our body that are connected to our spine, therefore our nervous system, therefore the rest of our organs. So TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, NLP, neurolinguistic programming, and that is also another tool that uses a lot of psychology, that uses the use of our words so that we can create neurotransmitter, like new neural pathways, and energy psychology. So lots of psychology principles because we're able to go into various techniques using EFT and we can either solve unresolved beliefs that we may have. We can also go into future thinking, visioning. And so, in simple terms, is we call it good food for the amygdala. And the amygdala is the alarm system that we have that tells us that danger is around. And is there different types of EFT? Yes. So, happy tapping, for example, is the tapping that you see on YouTube. And that's how I
Okay.
started. I started tapping on
Okay.
YouTube because it's tapping that's very surface. We through a YouTube video, you can't really go deep with people because you need to, as a coach, as a clinical EFT practitioner, we sometimes we uncover things that are hard. And so through a YouTube video, we can't hold the space for people because then, it would be a little bit dangerous. And so happy tapping is the tapping that you can find on YouTube, on social media. I do a lot of happy tapping on social media as well. And that is the introduction to EFT. Once you
Okay.
work with a practitioner, then you can go much deeper into
Okay.
various aspects that you may need. And I discovered EFT because of my ADHD.
Okay. So I know that there's all these different ways. So I had no idea there was anything more than my little Brad Yates video where I did like the tapping, and
Yes.
I'm like, this is amazing. I feel so much
Yes.
better. I do know that a lot of teachers are starting to use it in classrooms, which I think is phenomenal.
Mhm.
But I only know what I know, right? And for me, it was for anxiety. But tell me, because I need to know more about how this helps with ADHD, because I can see, I mean, I've seen the benefit with anxiety, but how does it, because there's such a correlation between the two anyway, right? Like we know they run on the same gene line. We know that, I mean, we could even throw autism in there. We can throw all of those things that tend to fall on that genetic line where we're maybe a little more predisposed to it. But how did this help you? Because I may try this one too. And I'm going to be putting my kids up and like, listen, kids, we're tapping tonight. So
We're tapping.
we're doing this.
Yeah. So when I found out that I had ADHD, I was in college and I was procrastinating. So I'm a recovering procrastinator and a reformed people pleaser and perfectionist. And so I thought my brain was broken because my teacher in college said, look, this project, you turn it in. If you had put the time, it would have been great and award worthy. But you did it last night. And so I can't submit it because I went to design school. And so
Okay.
tests were literally projects that you had to put together and create and you go through a critique. And so we would get, I don't know, a month or two to complete a thing. And I would literally go the week off submission and do everything. And so after she told me that, I really got down because I was like, you know what? If she's telling me that I could create things that are award worthy, but I'm not doing it, what's happening? And so I went to the counseling center, we did all the things, and I realized that I had ADHD. And then I went into a super rabbit hole of all the things that I could possibly do to quote fix it. And that's how I found tapping. And what I then realized is that I started tapping. I also realized that I had anxiety. So I was super anxious because of my ADHD. With the ADHD, I don't have a strong executive function. And so because I can't make decisions because my brain lacks dopamine, then my anxiety comes in by saying, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And then it goes into like the various like overthinking moments. And so in reality, it helped with anxiety and that calmed my brain down to get to a place where I was grounded and regulated to take action.
Yeah.
And it also helps with
That's
decision making.
that's so good, because it is one of those. I think it's so, I mean, I think it's so interesting, not to backtrack too much, but when we do see people who have struggled for so long with anxiety, I'm sorry, for me, it's always been my mom will say something like, "What did I do?" And I'm like, "It wasn't you. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. You're fine." And I look back and I'm like, I can't think of anything, But then I'm starting to see these traits. My son was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and I'm starting to see these traits with him, and I'm like, Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. And I'm 48. So a lot of times, people are just finding this stuff out, even
Yes.
in their 40s, where it's like, wait a minute, this has always been a thing for me. I had no idea. I've never gone to, necessarily be diagnosed or anything, but I see more and more and more. And I had no idea that you could do tapping for that.
Yeah.
And now I'm so curious. I'm gonna like start figuring this out. So really helping you with the ADHD, which then in turn helped you feel less anxious because
Hmm.
your brain was not always scrambled trying to figure out how can I put this in order and how can I make myself move forward.
Totally.
Amazing. I
Yeah.
love that. Okay. So I want to go a little bit more into the idea of chronic procrastination because I actually had the opposite problem where I was always like, let's just get it done now so I never have to think about it again.
Oh.
And yeah, very much an opposite, which was also a very much I'm sure probably related to anxiety, but that's always been my thing is just go fast, get it done, forget about it forever. But talk to me a little bit more about chronic procrastination and how you figured this all out.
For sure. I mean, I love that you mentioned your type of action taking because
Uh-huh.
there's active procrastinators and there's passive procrastinators. And the active
Oh.
procrastinators get things done. They just don't get the thing that's important done. And
Mm.
so when you say, I would get everything, you probably are not a procrastinator, but I think it's worth mentioning
Mm-hmm.
that chronic procrastination could come in, it's not always freeze mode. Sometimes it's action taking, but
Mm.
it's not the
Okay.
important action. So, for example, if I have to send an email to a client who's waiting for me,
Mm-hmm.
I could clean my inbox. I could get everything else done. I could go like clean my bathroom, go do dishes, do laundry, like being highly productive. So that's an
Mm-hmm.
active procrastinator and not send the email because that's the important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Passive procrastinator is when you legit just freeze mode. And I given my knowledge on trauma and my training in EFT, I would say it's a trauma response because what's on the other side of getting the thing done? And
Mm-hmm.
so many times chronic procrastinators are actual perfectionists because people tend to procrastinate when they don't feel like they have control
Mm-hmm.
or when there's fear. And the fear, something that I discovered when I was exploring my fear and when I was exploring my procrastination, I was never afraid of failing because failing for someone that looks like me, failing is a given. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
put in this world as a Latina, as an immigrant, as a non-English speaker, it's my first language. My humanness is set to fail. And so failing is never a fear for me. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
succeeding because I don't have models,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know what it's like to be on the other side, because I don't have people to ask, what does it feel like to be on the other side? And so the fear piece when it comes to procrastination is super important. Perfectionism, feeling that you're not doing it enough, and the anxiety is very much linked to procrastination as well.
Mm-hmm. That is so good. But because I think that we do look at perfectionism as, oh, I want to be, especially with the people that I work with, like, I don't want to mess up. I don't want people to think that I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know that. But your experience is very, very different. The
Yeah.
idea of not having that model of what to do. And I know you mentioned to me before we talked that really even the Latinx community, not necessarily being super supportive or super into the idea of getting help or like it's kind of like a giant, the way I related it to is it's almost like this giant, like we're still back in my childhood in the 80s where I was
Yeah.
like, suck it up, buttercup, this is gonna be fine, you can do it. It is
Mhm.
not a thing.
It's very
Okay.
stigmatized.
Yes, what is that like?
It's very challenging. When I started podcasting back in 2016, I would once a month I would bring in a friend of mine who's a therapist and she's a Latina therapist. So I told her back in 2016, let's talk about mental health. And my friends, other podcasters, like friends of mine, they were like, "Oh, you're so privileged because you get to talk about mental health because we don't do that. We just get over it." And so that's when that gave me so much more fuel to talk about mental health. And now there's more and more. I feel like millennials, my generation, is talking
Mhm.
more about mental health.
Mhm.
However, there's still, I mean, we're still dealing with our parents who have the stigma. And from what I have seen, and I read an article a while back around the stigma of mental health. It's very much linked to colonization, even. Like it goes
Mm.
way back because religion was indoctrinated to people. And so the idea is that, especially for immigrants, I mean, it's still a stigma. The experience is just, it's broad because you have the immigrant experience, you have the first gen experience, you have the second gen experience, and then so there's a lot of layers to that. And then you have the people that live in Latin America, that also there's a different kind of stigma. But in a nutshell, what I have seen is that it's all linked to faith because
Ooh.
God was put on us so much. When colonization happened, the native people in the land were removed from their faith because a new type of faith was put on us. And so as the generations started happening and the conversation around religion started happening, I mean, we come from very religious cultures. And so the conversation is very much around, we don't talk about like a mental health issue because that means that you're not faithful. Your faith, you're not like your faith in God is not enough.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It just makes me
Or
want to go,
I know. Or you're weak-minded because,
no.
quote, God is like gives like strong character. I don't know. And there's so much linked to religion. It's very hidden though. There's like lots of undertones that are not like now said, but it's like if you look back, and I question all the time, like, why do you say that? In fact, if I can share a conversation with my cousin, I was so mad because she owns a business and she was telling me that one of her employees was not doing well. And unfortunately, a lot of times, especially immigrants, they go to alcohol and drugs because that's the only thing. And so he called her to tell her that he was not doing well. And her husband said something around, we are going to send him to the loquero. What the loquero is like the crazy man. And he met a therapist. Yeah. And so there's still a lot of that type of stigma around dealing with mental health situations. And so I had to have a conversation and be like, no, that's not how you call it. Two, just because you can't see what's wrong with them, he's telling you he's not doing well. Let's find some resources. They exist. We're not in the times anymore of just getting over it. We're not working bodies anymore. And the other thing in the US, especially for immigrants and children of immigrants, our bodies are seen as working bodies. We are the workforce. Just that's how a body like mine is assumed that we do intense labor. And so horses don't have mental health issues, so we just get over it, get back to work, and that's what we do. So it's less of a stigma now than it used to be, but the fight still continues.
Yeah. And that whole just get over it idea. I mean, if it were that simple, right? Okay, no, I would love to.
Right. Let me turn the switch on.
That's sort of like, I mean, get over it. I mean, how many times? Yeah, that's a lot. But I think that it's so interesting also the idea of religion being wrapped into it. And I've told this story before that I can remember at like my lowest point, laying in bed and just like begging God to be like, okay, look, I can't do this anymore. And I'm like super trying to be faithful. And then it dawned on me years later after I was like well into recovery where I'm like, whoa, I was doing that totally wrong. Like totally wrong. Like everything that I could possibly have done wrong between faith, between anxiety, between like psychology and like somatic practices. I'm like, every single thing I did just made it worse. I had no clue what I was doing. But I really did have that thought of, no, obviously I'm just not doing this whole Christian thing right either. Like I'm screwing everything up. But to have that be part of, I mean, and that was something that it wasn't put on me, but to have that be like actually set on my head as a crown, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So you are taking that whole stigma and hopefully like helping to move that aside. How are you doing that? Do you feel like you're out conquering the world? Do you feel like this is one person at a time? How do you feel like this is going? Like,
It's going, I
yeah.
think. So I think my passion for mental health started with actually my grandfather, because
Mhm,
he was an attorney,
mhm,
and I grew up with him, and so he would get home from work, and the law consumed him so much that he would go into his like studio room and
mhm,
smoke
mhm,
cigarettes for the
mhm,
rest of the night after work. And no, like he
mhm.
was talking to my dad about him. My dad says, yeah, I had an absent father, because even though he was there, he wasn't there because he was fully depressed. And so me as a little girl, having seen just a little bit of it, because I didn't, just a little bit of it, I got to be very curious about mental health and how we don't talk about it, because my grandfather never did. And he died depressed and probably anxious. My grandma was super anxious. And so how do I do it now? One client at a time. We're
Yeah,
doing one session at a time. I
yeah.
do now the other piece of tapping that I do is called matrix or imprinting, and that allows us to go
Mhm.
into inner child work. And so it's literally healing one little girl at a time.
That's amazing. That is so good. Like every time anybody says that, it makes me get all
Mhm.
teared up. I'm like, it's like this army of little girls are gonna like come out and it's gonna be so good.
Yeah.
It's
Because
like
then they
this
go
weird,
back and heal mom.
yeah, yeah. And then mom can heal their kids, and this is how we break it,
Totally.
right? I mean, for everybody across the globe, it's kind of been my thing. Like, if we can all just figure out how to help ourselves and then
Hmm.
help one more person, we can knock this out. We're just going to
Yeah.
multiply it. I mean, look how
Trickle
quick we
effect.
get to 8 billion people on this planet. We can do it. It
Totally.
is, but such good work. I just love that. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So I want to know, can you show people? I mean, I know we talked about happy tapping, we talked about matrix tapping. Can you tell me, like, out of my own curiosity, is it a different method, or is it just the thoughts and the like the verbalization, like the NLP part of it that changes?
It's a different method. So when you
Okay.
do regular EFT, you tap on the side of the hand and you go
Mm-hmm.
through the top of the head, eyebrow, side of the eye, under the nose, under the mouth,
Mm-hmm.
collarbone, under the arm. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
basic 12 points that you do in regular
Mm-hmm.
tapping. When we go into the matrix, it's very close. It's not, but it's close to hypnosis. So
Oh, okay.
we through a series of exercises, we tap on the fingers instead of the full
Okay.
body, and we
Okay.
use finger tapping to get people into a relaxed state to enter then into the part of the memories where their inner child lives.
Oh,
And
oh
so
wow.
yeah, so matrix is a much deeper, but actually is gentler than regular EFT, in fact,
Okay.
because
Yeah. Go
you're
ahead.
removed from it.
Yeah, I can see that. And then I'm always, so when I've done it, and you're right, I do like the whole like chop on the side of the hand and like, yeah.
Hmm.
So I've done that and practiced that. And so, but it seems like I'm thinking like even fingertip feels gentler than like trying to find the spot on like, am I even hitting this in the right spot?
Right.
Like, especially, yeah. So all of the spots. So different meridians.
Different
Is
meridians.
that, mhm. And does that change in terms of the way like the memory is stored, or is it more a different access
N-
point?
It's just a different access point. What happens with
Mhm,
regular EFT, we activate the body. And
mhm,
so if you've ever done one-on-one tapping with a clinical EFT practitioner,
mhm,
you probably you could access memories, and
mhm.
you access them in the body.
Okay.
When we do matrix work, because the finger tapping allows you to like fully be in it's just a really weird thing. It's hard to explain.
No, you're speaking my language. I love it.
Okay.
Everybody else just tune out if you don't get it. I want to know this.
I know. So it gets you. So basically, we travel timelines. So we're
Yeah.
able to get into the place and space where the memory happened. And present you remains present you here. And so what's really cool, what did you freeze? What's really cool about matrix work is
There
that,
oh,
are we back?
let me
We
see.
froze
It
for a
says my
sec.
internet. Yeah, we froze for a sec. Okay.
What was the last thing you heard?
I think that it was talking about the timeline when you talked about present you is still here.
Okay. So
Yeah.
present you is still here.
Mhm.
And what's really cool is that present you remains present you. So you're able to witness whatever happened, and present you shows up for little you. That's what happens in Matrix. So when we do regular EFT, present you and little you are blended. And so that's why it's so much more intense than, and there's gentle techniques. There's a few, like 10 different types of gentle techniques that we use in regular clinical EFT. And gentle techniques mean when we hit a trauma point where we can use those techniques to prevent you from reliving it, because what we don't want is to re-traumatize people. What happens in Matrix, and the reason why when I do trauma work, I do Matrix now only, is because you're completely dissociated. So present you stays present you, and then we're able to witness whatever happened and support that version of you. And it's really cool because then when little version of you may need some support from another version of you, we can call that. So it's similar, for just to get some familiarity with family systems type of work. You bring in different parts. So we're able to bring in the different parts of you and keep distance from it. That's the difference.
That is amazing. And so, I mean, it's so different. I think that when we think about therapies, one of the things that I actually just saw a post not too long ago on Threads, and it said, what are the reasons that people don't go to therapy? And I replied to this post and I said, because they're terrified of having to bring all these emotions to the surface. And somebody's reply was, but why? And I'm like, because they're hard. Like it hurts and it makes you cry in front of people, and it's hard. I'm like, it's not that it's not valuable, but that idea of going in there bearing your soul to someone that you don't know, sometimes it's enough for people just to say no, and they so much need that help. But to be able to offer this where it's like, no, you don't have to jump back into that trauma alone and relive it over and over again. I just think that's beautiful. And it's so helpful for people who do have some really big, awful things that they're trying to work through. So
yeah,
that is incredible.
Really,
and I didn't know that was
sessions.
possible.
Yeah.
That's so good. Tell me one of the sessions that you're most proud of, without giving away. I don't want you to give away,
I won't break
client privilege things. They're like that. Don't break that client privilege. Right.
Oh, so many. But one, I was just really proud because I had a client, because I work with first generation women and femmes who are looking to own their voice and stand in their power. And so one of my clients, high achieving Latina, owns her business, super successful, everything on paper is like she got it. But she was dealing with this belief of not being enough. So it's kind of like in her case, it didn't matter what accolades she had accomplished. It was always chasing the next one and the next one. And she couldn't find herself at a place of contentment. And so I'm all for go for the next success. And could you sit in the contentment? And for her, that was not possible. She had to chase the next thing and chase the next thing. And so when we went to the Matrix, we found a moment in her life where she had done something and she needed her dad to be there for her, and he wasn't. And so we were able to bring in her dad energetically speaking, and ask him if he could tell her that he was proud of her. And he couldn't. And he said, because I need my dad to tell me that he's proud of me. And so we brought little dad, little version of dad. And all of this, present her is like orchestrating this. So we brought little version of dad and grandpa. And then grandpa, like this macho Mexican, like from the rancho, like he was like, what are you talking about? And that's how for me as a practitioner, that's how I know like it's really happening, because the things that people say, sometimes I'm like, you're not making this up. Like, this is actually how a grandfather would talk, you know? And so, and so grandpa could not understand. He just couldn't get it. He was like, tell you I'm proud of what? You need to get to work. And little dad, big older dad, present dad said, well, to little dad, he needs to know that he's 9 years old and he can still be a kid. That's all he needs, because he started working that young. And so then grandpa was like, no, I need my wife to come. And so grandma came in, and it was like this, like so many different generations and layers of people. And then grandma finally was like, you can tell him. So we needed permission from his wife, which is fascinating, to tell grandpa, to tell son, little dad, that he was proud of him, that he could be a kid, that he could go play, that he deserved to play and be a happy kid, and still had to work, because we're not changing the reality. We're just shifting the perspective. And so then once little dad understood that he was able to be a kid and play and have fun, then older dad was able to tell his daughter that he was proud of her. Little daughter.
That is so amazing.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
And so then
that is a huge deal.
Huge deal. And so when we did that session, and what's cool about generational healing, that's truly generational healing. You know, when people talk about generational healing, that we went layers and layers of generations. And I love getting messages from her like, oh my gosh, we accomplished this win in my office, and I'm celebrating. Like, I'm actually sitting here in joy, and I'm crying happy tears, because she would go into freeze mode. Like, she couldn't even like nothing. And so now she's able to celebrate, and that's a more win to me than anything.
Yes. And how motivating for her that she actually gets to celebrate when she does something good, so that when she wants to do something even bigger, she can, but she doesn't have to feel good. Oh, that is magic.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
You are a magician. And
I'm
totally intrigued by this idea of bringing back like the grandparents, and then like grandma's in charge, which is amazing too. But yeah,
that was really cool to see.
Right? Like, I'm gonna have to ask my wife first. That is so cool. So you said you mostly work with first generation immigrants and just like high achieving like Latinx women. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So how do people find you? People that are listening to this podcast, where do they go? What do they need to know to be able to work with you?
Yeah, so you can go to cafeconpam.com. That's the easiest one to write. Or pamcovarrubias.com is my personal site where you can find out all the things that I do, one-on-one work. Amazing. Especially.
Perfect. And I am going to have all of those links and all of the information in the show notes and on YouTube in the comment section, or whatever that little section is that I can never figure out what to write there. But it will all be there, so you can find it. And it'll also go out in my email newsletter that I send, so that hopefully anyone who's like, oh man, I got to talk to her, and how can you not be after that, will be reaching out to you. This is such amazing work. I just love it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for coming on
People
today.
Have to be ready for it.
Yes. Oh, for sure. I think that, there's always that level of, what am I going to learn about myself?
Yeah.
Sure. What do I not know? So but how amazing when you get to let it go and release all of that. That's so good.
It's really fun. And it's awesome when people give themselves permission, because you don't have to suffer through it again. And I get a lot of, to your point earlier, when people are like, why don't you go to therapy? I've gotten to work with several people who've been re-traumatized by doing different practices where they have to retell the story or they have to kind of like relive what happened. And so I want to clarify that we don't do that. I'll never ask you to retell me what happened. In fact, I tell you not to. I don't need to know what happened. I don't need you to think about what happened. We just need to go and like change the perspective.
Amazing.
Shift the perspective a little.
So good. Yeah, that right away, it should be a relief for every single person that's listening to this who's like, yes, but I'm so afraid of having to tell it again. I think that is, I mean, I know that recently coaches have been catching a bad rap for a lot of things, but I think
So
that
much.
when you get someone who is very, I mean, who is so, first of all, able to help you, and they're specifically because we want to see you grow, that we're going to tell you, you don't have to dive into that. And I think that is a really big gift that comes with coaching that kind of does set us apart sometimes from therapy, where I don't need to know your story. We just need to talk about how you feel and how you want to feel instead. Let's go there. Let's really go into the place where you feel solid. So amazing, amazing work. And I feel so blessed that I got to talk with you today, because every time I hear of other people that are out there doing this work to just try and help people feel better and to recover and to break this so our kids do not have to keep going through that same crap. It is amazing.
Yes. I've seen that too. Because, they say when we heal 7 generations backwards and 7 generations forward. And I have lots of clients with kids. And many times we do some matrix work on mom. And then she comes back and she's like, my kid, my teenager who never listens to me, all of a sudden he is like super friendly. And I'm like,
whoa.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
How's that? You know what? You could sell like billions of dollars in coaching on that one point. I can make your teenager smile and listen to you. Right. Yes, I will buy whatever you're selling. Yes, through you. They don't have to do anything. That is amazing.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you again for being here. And
thank you.
It was a joy. It was a joy. It was so good to meet you and to talk with you today.
Likewise. Thank you. This was super fun.
Right.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the More Than Anxiety podcast. Before you go, be sure to subscribe and leave a review so others can easily find this resource as well. And of course, if you're ready to feel more relaxed, have more energy, more confidence, and a lot more fun, you can go to the show notes, click the link, and talk to me about coaching. Talk to you soon.